As promised, today we're taking a look at more Gorilla Airsoft products. Specifically, the mFCU and tFCU, purposefully designed for V2 gearboxes and the systems built upon them. In each package you will find the trigger board itself, a selector plate with a magnet, a power wire harness that goes to your battery, 2 solenoid wires, gearbox screws for installation, a card with a QR code for the manual, and in the case of the mFCU, a magnet holder that you can glue to your trigger in case you don't have a trigger with a magnet already. Physically, they are almost identical, the only difference being the way they register a trigger pull. The tFCU has a micro switch with a fixed actuation point and no weight to it, and the mFCU has a magnetic actuation point which can be customized. Let's take a look around the trigger board and then we can dive into the features. Every side of the trigger board has a thin coating that will prevent damage done by humidity. That being said, don't submerge it in water, it does not have an IP rating. On the far right, there is a 3-pin plug which can be used for tracer hop-up chambers or electric gel ball magazines. In the mFCU, just under that plug, is the magnetic trigger sensor. Moving down and to the left, we find a plug for the power input. In some builds, this might be too tight to also have a line going through the grip. In cases like this, you can desolder the connector and solder the power wires directly to the board, saving some space. Just above that, we have the solenoid plugs, labeled N and P, for nozzle and poppet. Both mFCU and tFCU can work with single and dual solenoid systems. For single solenoid systems, you attach only one wire from your solenoid to the plug marked P. For dual solenoid systems, please consult their manual to find which solenoid is which. In the case of an F2, for example, the top solenoid is for nozzle and the bottom one for poppet, so you wire them accordingly. In case the provided selector plate is not compatible with your gearbox or build, you can use a standard selector plate that fits, you just need to superglue a magnet in a specific position. The selector magnet position is described in the manual, but what I did is I measured the position on the Gorilla selector plate and I matched it on mine. You need to be careful to have the same polarity facing the trigger board as the Gorilla one. As for the trigger, on the mFCU, if you're running a Max one, or different brand without magnet holder, you just need to glue the included magnet caddy to your trigger. If you want to run a Gorilla or another trigger with space for a magnet, I found that a 3mm by 3mm magnet works best. Again, be careful to respect the polarity and match it to the caddy that was provided. If you have the tFCU, you don't need to worry about any magnet on the trigger, but a good practice is to adjust your trigger's post travel so it stops before bottoming out on the micro switch. That way, you avoid damaging it. Speaking of features, to understand them and all the options these trigger boards have to offer, Gorilla made a very good manual with installation instructions as well as details about the setup, etc. You can find it, again, by scanning the QR code on the card that came with your FCU. In case you lost it, the manual is always available on their website under each product. These trigger boards are only as powerful as the settings that are available in the app. So let's explore it, see what's available and what you can customize. On the top left, there is a connect button. Once you press it, you will get a list of all Gorilla boards nearby. To help identify your specific board, you can rename it here. First option is FC mode. This determines if your system is single or dual solenoid, 0 for single and 1 for dual. Next, CB mode refers to close bolt, if your system has the option to change that. Since the Fusion engine and F2 both have spring-loaded nozzles, as well as the Inferno, this needs to be set to 1 for closed bolt. Magazine counter is used for systems with empty mag detection, so not our specific case here. The next two options are basically burst settings, allowing you to select how many BBs will be fired for each selector position. Friction timer and value is best explained in a manual, so please check it there. Now we get to the actual firing settings. These are also best explained in the manual, but basically these 4 settings control the air volume and time, so changing these is mandatory for each replica, depending on barrel length, BB weight, etc. Sniper delay does just that. Applies a delay for each shot if you have a DMR type setup and want a more realistic shooting scenario. Estimated ROF will calculate based on auto settings, which is the possible rate of fire the system can achieve. Then you have a BB counter for the lifetime of the board as well as for this session. Dual trigger is binary, so activating this will cause a BB to be fired on a trigger pull and another one on trigger release. Ramp is a feature present in paintball that I hope never makes it to Tournament Airsoft. Inverted fire mode swaps the selector position, basically having auto on semi and semi on auto. LED output is for the extra port mentioned earlier, in case you have an LED hop-up chamber or gel ball magazine. The next buttons are quite important, especially on the mFCU. You need to set the trigger position, so the FCU knows when to fire on a magnetic setup. For tFCU, this is not necessary. The procedure is explained in detail in the manual, but basically, you first have to define the selector positions, as trigger setup can only be done on safe. So, put your selector on safe, press set safe, then you can press set trigger, pull the trigger to the position you would like it to fire, and then press accept. You will get a prompt on the screen if the setup was successful. One thing that I discovered is that if you want to have semi-fire on both selector positions of semi and auto, it is better to never define the position of auto, because although you can set auto to fire only one BB burst, this has a slight delay shot to shot compared to true semi. If I had to provide some constructive feedback, I would ask Gorilla to take a page out of Gate's book, as the way they programmed their trigger calibration process and interface makes it a lot easier for customers compared to the one on the mFCU. A visual range of trigger positions, selectable actuation point and real-time trigger position. This would take the guesswork out of it, not needing to check if the magnet is out of the board range, how much trigger travel would be available, etc. After using both boards, I have to say that personally I prefer the tFCU, as for me it seems to be more predictable in the reset point of the trigger, so I can shoot it faster and feels exactly like my Fusion Engine trigger board, which is also made by Gorilla and features the same microswitch. The other high-end trigger board I use is the Gate Titan 2, and honestly, they are comparable. Each has their strengths and weaknesses. For example, the Titan has issue with strong light, which is really easy to get in the gearbox when you have a skeletonized receiver and gearbox. On the other hand, the interface in the Gorilla app has some way to go before being on par with Gate. In conclusion, while being an expensive product, both the mFCU and tFCU compete head-to-head with other options on the market, and are targeted at people who want the best out of their guns. Let me know down in the comments what other products you'd like me to take a look at in the future. If you like this review, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps and motivates me to keep going and make more videos when I see that subscriber count go up. See you in the next video.